Well, it looks like the Diablo 4 news just doesn't stop. This week has been pretty much jam-packed with new updates. A lot of this coming from IGN, who continues to pump out content from that one interview they did a few weeks ago. Hey, you know what? I respect the hustle, and how else are you gonna upload 30 videos a day after all? So yeah, we got a couple of videos since our last update.
We know that we have an audience of folks that have played lots of Diablo and are looking for a challenge. And so our second World Tier 2, and our first World Tier are available from level 1 when you first start playing the game.
So this is just basically the two starter difficulty tiers, normal and hard. They're just calling them World Tiers and having them available straight from the get-go.
So the first tier, adventure mode, tuned more for people who are new to Diablo, or people who just want to enjoy the story and not worry about the combat too much.
That, of course, is a great idea. We shouldn't forget that a vast majority of people who are going to play this game aren't the kind of people looking for the more difficult hardcore experience. There's certainly not anyone watching this video. There's a lot of people who just want a casual, easy baseline. They want to breeze through. They want to see what happens with all their favorite Diablo characters. Where's going on with Tyrael? Is Deckard Cain still kicking around? So yes, of course, cater to those people. Give them an adventure mode, let them have fun and not die 10 times when they just want to hear the next bit of the story.
For people who are looking for more of a challenge, we have that second mode.
And I'm surprised he didn't mention it, but we actually know what that second mode is, Tier 2. It's called Veteran Mode. It is just a harder version, and it's going to give you, as you expect, better rewards, increased item drops, increased experience and gold, all at the cost of having to fight harder enemies. You might die sometimes, right? Occasionally, but it's not going to be quite too hard. Tier 2 or Veteran is still going to be, things ramp up in the later tiers.
And then as you level up and you get up to level 50, you're going to progress through those additional world tiers. And those work somewhat more like the Diablo 3 world tiers or difficulties work, in that as your gear is progressing, and of course, depending on how optimized your gear is in terms of efficiency, you're going to progress up through those world tiers, and that's going to set effectively how your kill rate of monsters, the rate of loot acquisition.
I love how he says what it affects is your kill rate of monsters, where basically what he's saying is everyone has more health, so the kill rate is slower, and until, of course, your power progresses beyond that point, and then the kill rate becomes faster, and then you move on to the next tier, and that's kind of the leapfrog that takes place.
And as you get up into those later world tiers too, in Diablo 4, you're going to get access to sacred and ancestral item tiers, which are higher tiers of items that have more exciting stuff. There's even a few items that are reserved for those later world tiers.
And this is also basically how it's worked in Diablo 3. As you climb the torment levels, which is their difficulty, just D3's version of world tiers more or less, as you climb that, you're going to be more likely to get those higher tier rarity items as opposed to the lower torment levels. So it's going to work just like that with world tiers in Diablo 4. So you climb the world tiers, and the higher you go, the higher percent chance there's going to be for the sacred and ancestral items to drop.
Having a way to measure your progression through world tiers or in D3 was like through torment levels. And Immortal, it's like going from Hell 1 to Hell 5.
Oh, they had hell levels in Immortal. I don't know. I made it like 2 hours before I checked out of that one. Although honestly, I probably should have played it more just for like academic reasons. Maybe I'll go play some more Immortal. No, I won't actually. I changed my mind.
As you become more powerful, you want to challenge yourself. And then by challenging yourself, you get better loot, which means you get more powerful, means you want to challenge yourself. And so you kind of get into this, you want to be able to have that experience. And Diablo really shines when you find that sweet spot. Like oftentimes you'll get to a point where slightly underpowered, working your butt off, you get that amazing drop. Now you're kind of into it. And then you get another amazing, now you're overpowered and everything's too easy. So now you need to ratchet up the difficulty so you get better. Now you're slightly underpowered again, you get into your sweet spot.
And I know that is a big part of the sort of progression, kind of leapfrogging, where you've got a baseline difficulty, the damage you're taking, how long it takes to kill enemies, and then you build yourself up through either leveling up, but once you're at max level, through getting more gear that makes you stronger, makes you take out enemies quicker and survive longer, and then you move to the next tier, and all of a sudden you shift to the bottom of that totem pole, and then you build yourself up, and then it becomes easy, and then you go to the next tier, and that is the sort of like leapfrog progression that these games are really built around, how they're structured. But also, I feel like if that is all that you're doing, at some point you just kind of check out. At least for me personally, I can't just deal with that leapfrog progression being the only thing. And I do really feel that there either need to be some major milestones which really mix that up. Instead of constantly doing that yo-yo, there need to be some bigger milestones, especially content-wise. I really think it's beneficial to have some big things that you're doing that leapfrogging towards. I mean, a great example is with MMOs. You're moving through these different types of content, normal dungeons and then hard mode dungeons. And then maybe there's some games will have a higher difficulty version of dungeons, but then also mixing up those dungeons with different affixes, and then going from dungeons into the higher difficulty thing being raids, like that kind of thing. And I really hope that they are delivering on that as well in D4. I really hope that's something that they aim for, instead of just being like the Greater Rift climb, for example, that I feel like I do every season in D3, and it feels the same every season in D3.
Yeah, let me just add too that on the later world tiers, we saw an opportunity to add a challenge that world tiers culminate in, as it were. So at the end of tiers 3, 4, and 5, there's a boss that you can defeat in order to unlock the next world tier.
So that is a great idea. That is a perfect example of something additional. And I actually really like the concept of not just jumping to the next world tier once you feel like you're able to do it, but actually having to pass this hurdle, like take a test that determines whether or not you're actually capable. Now, unfortunately, from what I've been seeing from people in the beta talking about it, it seems like at least how it's currently implemented in the game, in this current version, this current build, the world tier bosses aren't especially difficult, and even that last one, the level 100 boss, isn't especially difficult. And so that I feel like it should be, right? I feel like it should be a real challenge, and it can't just be like a damage sponge, and then once you have enough, I mean, it can be, but it would be better if it wasn't just, I feel like it should be more than just a DPS check, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And if they aren't already in the game, ideally they can put mechanics in the game that make it more than just a DPS check and have some sort of skill, some attentiveness required involved. Because yeah, based on what people are saying currently, as long as you're like sort of paying attention, these world tier bosses that you need to clear to progress are a cakewalk, really.
The last world tier, where you can gear all the way up to 100, has a boss at the end of it, which is extremely difficult. Something to stand up against with all of your optimized gear and say like, all right, this is what I've been building toward,
And this actually really has me wondering something else, is this level 100 boss, the sort of like last bit of thing that you're working towards, that you're progressing through all of the endgame content? You're doing the Helltide zones, you're doing the Nightmare dungeons, you're doing the open PvP, farming gear that way. Are all of those things in service of working towards that level 100 boss, and is that like the pinnacle of it? Is that going to be the final thing that we're working towards, or is it just more of, from that point, you're then pushed into another world tier and you keep going and going and going?
And that's one of the things I really love about D4, is that more than any of the previous Diablo games, there's just so much more choice in how you lean into that power fantasy. From what does your barbarian look like, or what does your sorceress look like? What are the skills that you're using and how you're leveraging them? The fact that you can pull legendary like affixes or abilities off of equipment and weapons and place them into other weapons, and all the permutations. You're not locked into, I'm looking for this set of boots. Okay, you found that boot, it's cool, but I'm going to actually put that on my sword because there's something else I want on my boots that's going to make this amplified in a way that you've never seen before, because you've never had that freedom before.
This is actually one of my favorite aspects and things that they're doing in Diablo 4. The fact that they're letting you basically take the reason you have a particular item because of the unique effect that it gives you and move that to another piece of gear, to another gear slot. Ideally, that's going to make the possibility for different builds a lot more varied and a lot more interesting, because I know, for example, in Diablo 3, if I'm going for this particular build, I know exactly what pair of boots I'm going to be wearing because I need that exact particular buff, and that buff is only on the boots, and so that means those are the boots that I'm wearing, But in Diablo 4, theoretically, I could have that buff from the boots and I can move it to something else, opening up the possibility for me to wear another pair of boots, right? So that is really exciting. This system of being able to transfer the powers on this high rarity gear to other slots, I think is really, I feel like it's going to open up a lot more potential, which is great.
All those choices, that it's really going to feel like your power fantasy. It's your class, your character, your build. Even if we both play barbarians, means they're both going to look very different. We're going to have very different builds, and they're going to play very differently because of the skill trees and the immense Paragon boards that we can choose our path through those, which is going to be very different as well.
And that is a great concept. I just don't know. I feel like I haven't really played a game where there still hasn't been some meta. There hasn't been a best build for different types of content. A best AoE clearing build, a best single target build, a best PvE build, a best PvP build, a best support build. Every season when a new season, Diablo 3 season comes out, there are plenty of lists out there. There's a meta list of this is the exact best build that you can do. And again, they are doing some different things here. And like I said, it is exciting that you can transfer these powers from this high rarity gear onto other slots, but there will still probably be a configuration that ultimately, when the numbers all crunch out, that will be the ideal version of that particular play style, of that particular class type for each bits of content. I don't know, in any game like this, in any game with like extensive skills and modifications to those skills, and any RPG, MMO, like loot game, ARPG, there does still always seem to be something that the community settles on as the ideal for those different aspects of the game. And maybe D4 will be one to finally break it. The Paragon tree system seems pretty cool that they're working on, and all these adjustments and tunings that you can do, and this variety of mixing and matching. But anytime I hear a developer tell me, oh yeah, in this game, we might be playing the same class and even going for the same type of build, but each of ours will be very different. And when I hear that, it just makes me think, yeah, one of yours will be the bad version of the build, and one of yours will probably be the one that you copy pasted online from all the theory crafters crunching the numbers on their Excel sheets. I hope that's not the case, or maybe it doesn't even matter. Maybe I don't even care. I just want to know what the good build is for the thing I want to do. And rather than mess around with it too much, which we'll get to here in a second, might just cost you a lot of in-game currency or time. And yeah, in that case, I don't want to waste that. I don't want to waste the currency or their time. So just tell me what the good build is. Google, you got me? Yeah, you got me. Okay, so that is basically it for the world tiers and difficulty discussion. The other video that came out a few days earlier really dove into the class identity, stuff like the skill system, and talked a bit about character progression as well.
So we started with a couple of classes, and we had some really cool ideas for class mechanics that would be specific to those. It proved to be very compelling, not just in terms of the gameplay of the class, but also if you're playing a barbarian and then maybe you're grouped up with a sorceress, and the sorceress is using her class mechanic. It really, you look at that and you're like, oh, well, there's lots of really interesting gameplay there that I could check out, in the future, maybe on a future season or something like that. And so we really wanted the classes to shine in their own ways and differentiate from each other.
This is actually something that I feel like WoW does immensely well. There is quite a different feel to a lot of the classes in World of Warcraft. The perfect example for me was the first time I played as a demon hunter. Felt like I was playing a different game from when I was playing on my warrior or from when I was playing on the monk, adding additional mechanics. And particularly in that case, demon hunter has a double jump and a glide, and even just that difference in movement capabilities felt drastically different from playing any of the other classes in the game. It's more so than just, oh, I'm a warrior and I can cleave and whirlwind, and oh, I'm a wizard and I can cast fireball and ice bolt or something. Having mechanics that make these feel different beyond what is sort of like a superficial level, a great thing for any RPG to have. And I'm really hopeful that the various class mechanics that they are implementing in D4 manage to kind of reproduce that as well.
The skill trees have evolved dramatically over the course of development, I would say.
We're on number 4?
Many iterations. And a lot of it has come...
It is actually crazy just how many variations of a skill tree they've gone through. Not even just cosmetically, which there have been some drastic changes. The most ridiculous of one was the actual massive literal tree with all the little branches coming off of your different skills. It's kind of cool, but I just feel like visually it was too much and it didn't feel very clean. But they've had a few different variations, not only just visually, but literally functionally and concerning the depth. There were some early variations of the skill tree that just very, very simple, very, very streamlined. And it seems like the one that they've settled on is looking pretty deep and very interesting, and a lot more potentially a variation in the types of builds and things that you can do, even if it's not the ideal builds, right? Even if it's not the min-max builds.
I love theory crafting. That's one of the things that draws me to these types of games is how do I make a build? How do I set up skills? How do I make things work work together. And you want a lot of depth there so that you have a lot of choice, so we're not just making the same build all the time. Like we're both fire sorcerers, and we know exactly what skills we're using, and so you want enough choice there that you can kind of customize it, make it feel unique to yourself, but not, there's games where you would go into it and you go like, oh, that's way too complicated. Just go look up a website, tell me what I have to put in.
Oh, and something else about this, I know that I mentioned, there is going to be this ideal like meta. I guess it's also important to consider that that only really matters for like the most hardcore players, the people who are going to be continuously playing this game 6 months after release. There is that different layer of people who will get exposed to these systems and will interact with these systems, and they will have the variety where our two Whirlwind Barbarians can play drastically differently because it doesn't matter, because they're not pushing the higher world tiers. They're not fighting that level 100 boss. They don't need to min-max, and they're not really all that concerned. And there is value in that, even if the people who stick around longer is a smaller percentage of the total number of people who are going to end up playing and buying Diablo 4. And those are the ones that you do want to cater to the long term, because they're the ones playing. And that's also why, as a live service game, they can make those adjustments. So they can launch this game and have all these really cool pitches and these really cool ideas for that broad audience that are going to be like, oh yeah, jump in and check out my Whirlwind Barbarian. He sucks, but I like him. And then as the game progresses and the player base whittles down smaller and smaller to just the most dedicated, then in season 2, 3, and 4, they can make the updates and make the changes that base is demanding. And that they are serving two different audiences in that sense.
I was just making somebody else's build because the way you made a build was so complicated. I couldn't feel like I could own the theory crafting. And that's, I think, a line that we've been walking, is trying to make sure that you have lots of choices, both active and passive skills, is still sort of grokkable, that you can go and theory craft yourself and you can still create your own build.
And I actually do like theory crafting myself, as long as it doesn't feel like a detriment. And I think that's another thing to consider. Now in the Dragonflight pre-patch in WoW, I've been playing a monk and I've been playing around with the talent tree, and I've been trying different talents, picking up here and there. And it's been fun while I'm just screwing around. But I know when Dragonflight comes out and I'm going to be pushing, doing group dungeons or going into that first raid, the time to fool around has passed, right? And now it's time to be serious, and now it's time to find those good builds. And so there is another side to that, where it's cool to mess around and theory craft on my own up until it matters, really. That's how I approach it, at least.
Because you don't have the connection where, a skill is literally below this other skill and you must take 1 point in this and then that you saw in D2, but you have all of these sort of natural connections between things like this skill causes bleeding and this skill benefits from bleeding. And so we've built this skill tag system. We've authored this ability to search the skill tags so you can highlight nodes that are related to that, and so you can sort of see how these things are interconnected. And
I cannot tell you how amazing of a feature that is. As simple as it is, as like attaching keywords to different skills based on different effects, the bleed as the example, especially with a skill tree like this, a skill tree so massive. Any other game that I've played with really expansive skill trees with like tens to hundreds of different potential nodes to invest points into, spending the time mousing over each and every single one of them to read what they do and try to figure out if they're connected to the thing that you're trying to do, having the keywords to be like, bleed, whirlwind, and then see every single node that is related to that and decide, oh, do I want that reduced cost? Do I want this increased damage? All of these relate to whirlwind, even though they're all over the place. I'll be able to quickly find them and make adjustments based off of that. That is like, it's so simple. It's a keyword search, but it's amazing. So this next section that touches on respecs has actually been like highly debated in the community over the past couple of days here.
So you can respec point by point. You can directly in the skill tree for gold. And that gold cost ramps up at some rate as you level up. So as you clearly define your build and like get more things that are associated with it and supporting it, it becomes a little bit more expensive to respec, but still doable.
Okay, so skill respecing is a gold sink. Gold sinks are important in these games so that they just doesn't inflate out of control and then gold becomes basically pointless because you have so much of it. Great.
That's one of the things that's really different between D3 and D4 is like D3, once you get to a certain place, the difference between one build to another is like, I gotta go change my clothes. you know, because you're really focused on being set based or very equipment based, so that your build is kind of defined by your equipment more than anything else. So you're like, oh, I want to change from fire to ice, let me go change my clothes real quick.
Yeah, and that is absolutely the case. Going for gear sets or going for different special effects on the different pieces of gear to determine the strength of your build, because once your character is max level, you have all of your potential skills and all of the variations of that skill with those additional modifiers. You strengthen them and you alter them further entirely based on the gear, the different things that you have on your weapons, the gear set bonuses, all of that, right? That is what plays into like this, the specialization, the customization, and where you really fine tune and hone your build and build upon it.
And that's one of the things about the gold cost going up over time, is that basically there's going to be a point in time where, I'll make up a number, but like say at level 50, there's going to be a point in time where you go like, oh, I would like to be a different barbarian, but it's too expensive to undo everything I've done. It's actually better for me to roll another barbarian and start a new one and go fresh. And we wanted that notion that with each level you progress down a character, you're kind of becoming more and more attached to it and getting more and more sort of settled with it, so that you're not just going, okay, I'm level 65 and now I'm just going to change my clothes and become a completely different barbarian, you know? So
this is what I'm seeing a lot of arguments around, and I understand, because there's two ways to look at this. Their idea with this and what they've said about this is that they want it to feel like your choice matters, right? The choices, the skills that you select matter, and if you invest in your ice sorceress or your lightning sorceress, once you get to a certain point, a certain level, a certain world tier, whatever, it becomes so expensive that if you want to make a different type of sorceress, you would just re-roll it, right? Instead of respecking, because respecking is too expensive. Obviously, the hangups on this are, what if you make a bad build? It becomes too expensive. If you make a bad build, it's gonna be harder to grind the gold to respec it, so then you're just gonna go through that whole process and re-level. And does that mean you've lost all of the gear? Are you gonna be able to transfer that gear between your characters? If not, you gotta regrind and also hope for the drops and hope for these different rolls to get that really good item that you want. Or on the flip side, no, I don't want to re-roll, but my build is terrible, so it takes me forever to clear content, so it takes me even longer. I definitely understand the idea of wanting to have an investment and having like, this is my whirlwind barb, and if I want a seismic slam barb, I gotta make a new barb. And I guess to a degree, that's kind of what seasons are in a way. You're always starting over on seasons, you're making a new character, but there's just so many questions that we don't quite know. Like, they're saying it might be too expensive to respec and you might want to make a new one, but is it really? Is gold like it is in Diablo 3, where it doesn't matter? Like, I'll have enough gold that I can respec if I want. Sure, maybe I can't respec 10 times a day. Maybe that's too expensive, but can I respec and go finally look up and make that meta build that I find online after a couple of days of grinding? If that's possible, then maybe we won't need to reroll. The other thing we don't know is, how difficult is it to level up a new character? How long is it going to take? In D3 for a season, you hit max level in like a couple hours. I think you can hit max level in like under 2 hours if you do proper speed running, like chest farming or kill streak farming or something. Like, it's not very difficult to hit max level in D3. Now, it does seem like that's not going to be quite the case in D4, but we don't know. And we also don't know how seasons affect that. We know that there's going to be like leveling boosts in seasons. They're going to be part of the battle pass. So there's still a lot of questions. I understand the idea of wanting to be invested in a character, but I do think like a lot of the drawbacks might just be too much. But again, maybe not, depending on the rate of gold acquisition, depending on the time to take to max level. If it's not very difficult to just make a second barb so I can have my whirlwind and my seismic slam barb, sure, I guess whatever. And if it's not too difficult to grind gold, then maybe I can just respec. It's just, there's too many questions. I feel like, though, honestly, I would prefer, it doesn't need to be like D3 where I can just constantly completely swap my build as much times as I want without any restrictions, but I also think maybe it shouldn't be so restrictive that I feel like I'm forced to make a new character, right? I feel like, personally, that would be the ideal balance between those two. So those were the two videos. Those were the two videos from IGN, and these were actually, I feel like, a lot more substantial than some of the earlier ones. There's a lot more details, information, and actually interesting points of discussion and stuff brought up. There have actually been quite a few beta leaks that have been coming out as well over the course of like this past week. This video is already going to be pretty long though, so I'm probably going to save that for another video, but just some interesting stuff and insight from people playing the game right now who don't care to break the the NDA. So there you go. And also, the frequency of these D4 updates has just been at such a pace right now that it seems pretty clear they are ramping up for some big marketing push. And this also lends us to believe that the leaks that we've been seeing recently are probably true. And those are that we're going to be getting a announcement soon. The current timeline suggests there will be an official announcement during this year's Game Awards that takes place on December 8th. And at this point, Blizzard is planning to reveal the official release date of Diablo 4 and also opening up pre-order sales for the game. Now, when will that release be? Well, those same leaks say that they are aiming for sometime in April. So no, it would actually be an in-season April Fool's joke. It's cool. There's lots of stuff going on with this game, and I am genuinely still very excited. Lots of questions still, of course, about like the monetization model. We just bring it up every time there's a D4 video because yeah, I think it's going to be important long term. But monetization aside, if we forget that that's an aspect of the game, in terms of the gameplay and systems and all this stuff, like it looks like this game's going to be pretty cool, and it looks like it's going to be fun to play. I'm looking forward to diving in, and we can criticize and complain about different areas of the game, the gameplay, and the monetization model once it's finally out, or if I get access to the beta at some point and there isn't an NDA and we can talk about it. But as of now, neither of those things are happening. I'm not in, and if I was, I couldn't tell you, but I will tell you because I'm not in. So yeah, that's it for today, guys. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this update on Diablo 4. I will continue to keep an eye on the latest news as it pops up and make videos, but that's it for today. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.